You're listening to the Dillo's Dojo podcast, hosted by Dylan Dillo Smith, Midwestern Ontario one and only MMA podcast, where we interview MMA fighters and voice actors like Sergeant Frank Woods.
What is up, everybody? It is Dillo, and welcome back to the Dillo's Dojo podcast. Today's episode is episode 24, I believe. I didn't do an episode last week because I got a little busy helping my parents move and stuff, so I didn't end up actually watching last week's event until like the day after, and I just decided to not record because I was just too busy that entire weekend. And anyway, here I am now, and we've got a lot to discuss. Obviously, first of all, we got the UFC event last week that happened, the heavyweight main event between Rozenstruik versus Gane. And that was a little surprising, to say the least. The card wasn't too notable, so I'll be glancing through it. But in the second half, we will be talking about this weekend's stacked pay-per-view that just happened. So as of recording this, it is Sunday. I'm still reeling from last night's fights. They were incredible. We had some wacky shit happen. The prelims were stacked. There was like 15 fights or 16 fights in total. Most of the fights on the prelims ended by some form of finish, whether it was a KO, TKO, or submission. So it was just an incredible prelims to boot. But the main card was something else. We had at least, I think, 5 fights, and 3 of those 5 fights were championship fights. So we've got a lot to talk about with that. But first, let's just get into everything that's happening. Let's talk about some news first, because during this past week that just happened, there had been some news that dropped that kind of surprised a lot of UFC fans, and I guess MMA fans all around the globe. The UFC got rid of Alistair Overeem and Junior Dos Santos, 2 mainstays in the UFC heavyweight division, both of which have been fighting for at least 11 years, 12 years on the roster, been fighting in MMA for far much longer. We don't exactly know why they were let go. For JDS's sake, it could have been something that had to do with the 4-fight skid he's on, and I think every single fight that he's lost he's lost by KO. So maybe that's it. I'm surprised with Overeem though, because he'd been finished in a couple of his fights, but he's also actually shown he still can hang with some of the heavyweights. So I was a little surprised to see that kind of that decision be made. And especially in the heavyweight division, I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I actually love the heavyweight division, but the heavyweight division is the thinnest right now in the UFC, I think. Obviously, that title could easily go to the women's featherweight division, which I'll bring up later in the podcast, but I think the thinnest division out of the men's divisions right now is easily, without a doubt, heavyweight. It's thinner than flyweight, which is surprising to say, because even with flyweight, you can hardly name any contenders right now, especially any that could possibly beat Davison Figueiredo. So there's that. But anyway, I just wanted to cover that little tiny bit of news, just because that's pretty big. These guys were veterans in the UFC, big mainstays of the heavyweight division for a long time. Junior Dos Santos being a former heavyweight champion in the UFC, and only recently had they really been showing their decline, especially JDS. So I guess I understand JDS getting let go, but like I said, Alistair Overeem's just kind of surprised me. The real question begging all this is now, where are they going to go? There's several decisions they can choose. I don't know if any of them have answered yet. I mean, Junior Dos Santos is an incredible boxer. He's a very, very crisp boxer at heavyweight. I think he could probably go to bare knuckle FC, no problem. Even Overeem, because Overeem is a talented Dutch kickboxer, and I think he could even go to bare knuckle FC, but I wouldn't be surprised to see them maybe take a a big number deal over at One in Asia, or maybe even go to Bellator. I know that Bellator's heavyweight division is a little thin, so they might want those names for that division. We'll see, but all the best to those guys, especially like those specific two heavyweights, man. They just had to be those two heavyweights. They happen to be my favorite heavyweights in the entire division, both of which, because being an MMA fan for a little while now, I've pretty much grown as an MMA fan, grown up with them because of that. I've come to idolize them and recognize them because they've been big faces in the game for quite a while now. And it's upsetting to see it, but I guess this is just the sign of the times that, the old guard is now out and incoming is the new. And that era is starting to wane, I guess, because, I mean, Al, for example, look at Anderson Silva. He's not too bad, but, I don't think he's signed with anyone yet. I think he is still officially retired as far as I'm concerned. Like, no one has offered him any contracts yet, and he's done. Other people from that era like Rampage and Rashad and Bisping have all retired quite a while ago. And, DC wasn't even kind of from that era, and he retired not too long ago. So it's a little depressing because that was the era that I loved the most, because it was the one that I grew up to, understand and know. And it's just, I guess this is the sign of the times that that's no longer the big face now. It's obviously the new guys. But anyway, on with the actual, the last week's card, because I'm done rambling about that little tidbit of news. Just surprised me. That's all. We're going to leave it at that. So last week, we had a fight night that was between, like I said, Jairzinho Rozenstruik and Cyril Gane. And it was pretty surprising, the fight itself. Like I said, the card wasn't notable, so I'll kind of rush through most of them. The first fight on the card happened to be between two rather veterans and kind of mediocre records. Alex Caceres, who has always, every time he's in the octagon, has never produced a boring fight. He always tries flashy shit. There's a reason why people call him Bruce Leroy. I will admit, though, his new hairstyle is still jarring to me. He's always been known as the guy who goes in with this, like, big, wacky-ass afro, this messy afro, but recently he's had some short hair in his last couple fights, and it's just been very fucking jarring to look at, but nonetheless, it was going up against Kevin Kroom, who I believe won his last fight, and it was a surprising win on his part. So I wasn't expecting much from this fight, but I was really surprised with how Alex Caceres fought this fight. I was expecting more of a stand-up battle with Kevin Kroom, and we did get that, but we saw Alex Caceres go for takedowns more than stay on the feet, and that was kind of his key to victory. The standing was very close between the two, but he was just able to kind of control the ground game a tiny bit more and edge out a decision. And that, like I said, it was surprising to me how he fought that out, and pretty smart in the long run. I mean, both guys are veterans, so there's no lack of fight IQ in the cage at that moment. But it was just pretty smart on Alex Caceres' part. So it was a good win by him, in my opinion. But anyway, we're moving on to the next fight, which was supposed to happen at UFC 258, but unfortunately, I can't remember. I believe Jimmy Rivera got COVID, or one of the fighters got COVID between these two, and they had to pull it. They had to do the whole 2-3 week thing, and then they scheduled it for this fight card, and it actually happened. This, however, is a rematch between these two guys, where last time, I believe Jimmy Rivera won by a very highly contested split decision, and Pedro Munoz has been kind of chasing this fight since then. So coming into this fight, we got what we were expecting. Last fight between these two guys was close, very fast paced, very competitive. We got exactly that. But this time, we saw Pedro Munoz come out on top, and it was a little bit more clear than it was last time. But nonetheless, both guys banged, man. It was mostly on the feet, and this is why I love the bantamweights. It was so fast paced, fast strikes, combos. Pedro Munoz just did an incredible job, just out fighting Jimmy Rivera. Like that's the only way I can say it. It was just easy fight of the night. I'm pretty sure it won fight of the night. If not, I think a fight on the prelims did. But if that fight on the prelims, if that did indeed win fight of the night, if that didn't happen, this would have been clear fight of the night. This was such a high paced fight, very competitive, and just overall a great showing by Pedro Munoz. And tough luck for Jimmy Rivera, but Jimmy Rivera was still in it throughout the entire fight, so can't discount him at all. But that leads us into our next fight, which was in the women's flyweight division between one of the two De La Rosa couple, Montana De La Rosa, and she was going up against Mayra Bueno Silva. And this fight was not that exciting, I'm going to admit it. It was more so kind of a ground affair, but it was really close. It was really hard to score this one, and apparently the judges thought the exact same way because the judges ended up scoring it I believe a majority draw for both women. So it ended up finishing by a draw, but yeah, all 3 rounds was just mostly a ground affair. Nothing really of note there. And that kind of also explains our co-main event, which was between Nikita Krylov and Magomed Ankalaev, which I'm so upset that I was hyping this fight up and it didn't end up being what I wanted it to be, because Nikita Krylov, he's such a monster and he loves to stand and bang. And Ankalaev is a crisp kickboxer. He's got heavy strikes and he's very precise. I was expecting that. I'm not gonna talk shit about Ankalaev though, because what he did was smart and he mixed up his stand up with the ground game, and he showed that he actually had a fairly crisp ground game. So that's why I can't really talk shit about Ankalaev. I was just really upset with how this fight goes, or how this fight went, sorry. But yeah, you can't really predict these things, and honestly, good win by Magomed Ankalaev. He's certainly coming to his own in the light heavyweight division, and I feel like, more fights that he gets under his belt, more experience, he's just going to get scarier and scarier and more well-rounded with each fight. So it's going to be interesting to see how he does in the future, honestly. And that leaves us with the main event of that fight card, the heavyweight main event, the second heavyweight main event that we had in a row in February. And this one was between Suriname native Jairzinho Rozenstruik, and he was going up against French native Cyril Gane. Both guys being pretty incredible kickboxers, and that was what I was expecting as well. And we didn't get that at all. However, there was a lot of controversy for this main event. A lot of people were very upset with how these guys fought it out and how boring, I guess, how people were putting it was. To me, it wasn't that boring because it wasn't completely all a ground game affair. Cyril Gane did a good job at just walking Jairzinho down and just keeping him backed up against the fence. And something that I noticed from Jairzinho was surprising, because this is Jairzinho Rozenstruik's, I believe, his first fight since getting knocked out by Francis Ngannou. And he was extremely gun shy this entire fight, which allowed Cyril Gane to kind of walk him down and control the areas of the octagon. And he, every time Rozenstruik would try to throw a strike, it was kind of like that, I'm looking for my one shot, pulled the trigger, and Cyril Gane would take advantage of that. And I was really impressed with Cyril Gane that night because he used a lot of takedowns and controlled the fight on the ground when he had to, and showed a complete skill set of MMA. And I was really surprised because up until then, I believed he was a monster, and I'm still gonna fucking be on the Cyril Gane hype train. But I thought that he was primarily just a kickboxer. And, I was going to see a lot of that. And if anybody was going to go for the takedowns, I thought it was going to be Jairzinho. And I was completely wrong. And I'm so happy that I was wrong because it's pretty awesome to see that a guy that I thought was going to be one-dimensional show that he has a complete, more of a complete skill set. Now, I don't know if he's got any fucking submissions. I highly doubt it. But, his ground game seemed to be pretty decent. His wrestling seemed to be on point. No, like, Olympic level, but, enough to, last you in MMA. So I was really surprised with this main event. And Cyril Gane just completely shut out Jairzinho Rozenstruik 5-0. All 5 rounds just doing that same technique, just keeping him guessing whether he was going to go for a kick or if he was going to go for a takedown, and, Jairzinho being gun shy, just taking advantage of that. So I can see why people thought it was a boring main event. A lot of people were like, I want to see it's 2 heavyweight kickboxers, make fists go boom. But we didn't get to see many fists go boom, and I'm not too, disappointed about it. So, to each their own. But anyway, that was last week's fight card. Before we get into this week's, like, Saturday's fight card, the pay-per-view, the big one, I actually want to talk about next week's fight card, and I want to also kind of talk about the main card for UFC 260, because it's starting to shape up to look like another UFC 259 type deal, and I'm excited. So, without further ado, let's talk about the Belal Muhammad versus Leon Edwards fight card. All right, so here we are. We are looking at the Leon Edwards versus Belal Muhammad card. First of all, this card was originally supposed to be Leon Edwards versus Khamzat Chimaev, but some things happened. And before I get into the card, actually, let's just talk about that real quick. Earlier this week that just passed, because as of recording this, it's Sunday, it's going into Monday next week. But anyway, Khamzat Chimaev announced earlier this week that he has officially retired from active competition at a very ripe age of 26. And it's a very upsetting reason why. It's not because he had a heart condition or some stupid shit like that. Remember, he just contracted COVID, and that's why he's out of this bout with Leon Edwards. And now he's showing the effects of the virus, him coughing up blood and the damage that it's shown to, do to him. And because of that damage, he's decided to retire. However, it seems that Kadyrov doesn't want him to retire, and neither does Dana White. So we'll see where that goes. But as far as I'm concerned right now, Khamzat is retired or, going towards retirement because of his current health condition. And I understand that. Anyway, with that news behind us, let's talk about this card. Because if I'm looking at this right, there's 7 fucking fights on the main card. And every single one of them looks great. I'm excited for it. So, let's just name off all the fights on the main card. First of all, opening up the main card is ya boy, Eric Anders, going up against the dentist, Darren Stewart. And that is going to be a slugfest for the most part between these two, because Eric Anders is I believe an ex college football athlete, and he's just shown to be an all-around very good middleweight, great striking. And Darren Stewart has shown to be a guy who loves to brawl and has heavy hands, but also has submissions. So I'm excited to see where this fight goes, but I'm expecting a brawl between these two, because every time either of these two get into the cage, that's usually where it ends up. So that's a great fight to just open up the main card. But if that wasn't enough to satiate your hunger, we've got a flyweight bout between Manel Kape. Oh, God, I fucking hate saying his name every time because I want to say Cape so bad. Anyway, Manel Kape against Matthias Nicolau at flyweight. And if you guys don't remember, Manuel Kopp, he went against Alejandro Pantoja and lost pretty handily because he was pretty gun shy. And I have a feeling that even though there wasn't really much of a crowd there, I don't think there was a crowd there at all. I think that was a fight night card. I think he, even without the car or without the crowd, he had the UFC jitters maybe. So, maybe he's shaking them out a bit. I feel he's kind of jumping into things a little quickly here, but I don't think he took much damage in his last fight. So I mean, that's on him. But I'm excited for that because again, it's Manuel Kopp. I love to see him fight, and I can't wait to see him fight a great contender in fucking Mateus Nicolau, man. The guy has been shown to be a complete killer at flyweight, and he's rising up those ranks. So I'm excited to see that fight. And then next on the card is a fight that was actually supposed to happen, I believe, last weekend, actually, on the Rozenstruik card. But I can't remember who it was. I believe Angela Hill. Maybe it was COVID or maybe it was another health-related issue. I can't remember. But the fight was pulled off the card and rescheduled for this fight night. So we have Angela Hill up against Ashley Yoder, who is known as the woman who made me eat my words last time I made a stupid tweet saying that if she won, I would eat my shoe. And, I mean, if you guys follow me on Twitter, it's my pinned tweet. She fucking won, guys. So, as what's probably going to be tradition from now on, if Ashley Yoder beats my girl Angela Hill, I will eat my shoe on camera again. That is a guarantee. And you know that I am always good with my bets. I'm always straight to my word because I did it last time. Even though it was initially supposed to be a joke tweet, and then everybody started replying to it saying that I gotta. So I was like, okay, why not? So expect that again if she wins. But I'm excited for that fight because Ashley Yoder's pretty good on the ground, and Angela Hill is pretty good with her takedown defense. But Angela Hill's really good in the clinch. She's great at just holding you against the cage, and she just slices you up with close Muay Thai strikes, and it's going to be exciting to see. But the one fight that I'm probably the most excited for, other than the main event here, is the featherweight fight between Dan Ige and Gavin Tucker, a fellow Canadian. Gavin Tucker brings it every fucking time he steps in the cage, and Dan Ige, never a boring fight with Dan Ige. So I'm just expecting fireworks with this fight. I want to see Gavin Tucker win, obviously, because he's a fellow Canadian, and I want to see a fellow Canadian prosper. But I want to see a brawl out of Dan Ige, as he always brings, because I'm so excited for this fight. When this one was announced, I low-key squealed in my head because I was like, fuck yes, we're going to get violence. And if possible, I'm going to see a fellow Canadian rise the ranks if he wins. But I just want violence. And speaking of violence, we've got Big Ben Rothwell coming up next in the heavyweight division, going up against Felipe Lins. And Ben Rothwell always brings the fire when he fights. He is a heavy striker and a big boy. And I'm excited for this fight as well. Obviously, it's a heavyweight fight, so if anything, if it goes past the first round, we're probably going to see some slow-paced action. But I honestly want to say don't blink, because Ben Rothwell could probably knock out Felipe Lins. But I'm not counting out Felipe Lins either, because Felipe Lins has that power, and I believe he's actually a great ground artist as well. So I would probably bet my money on a surprise from Felipe Lins, but I'm excited for that fight. And then in the co-main event, light heavyweight, Misha Cirkunov up against Ryan Spann. That one, folks, is going to be a fun and all-around technical bout between two light heavyweights. Misha Cirkunov has great power, and he's an all-around just great fighter. Very balanced. And Ryan Spann, same thing. These guys are probably going to go for the kill, if anything. So, again, another fight where don't blink, because someone's going out probably, or someone's going to get finished. But if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. And I'm sorry, because these things happen in MMA. Sometimes when you're in there, your game plan falls apart, and you have to kind of resort to something else. But, as fans, we know that. So, whatever. But that brings us to the main event. And I'm really excited for this main event for two reasons. One, I want to see Bully B just completely prosper and get to that top 5, top 3 spot. Because right now, I think he's sitting at around 11th, and Leon Edwards is like 3rd in the world. So this would be a huge jump if he managed to outpoint Leon Edwards or managed to finish Leon Edwards at some point. Plus, if you don't follow Bilal Muhammad on any social media, Twitter, mostly Twitter to be honest, you are missing out because the guy loves memes and he's just an all around nice and funny fucking guy. But Leon Edwards, he hasn't fought since 2019, so that could very well be a factor. If I remember, it's gonna be like around 2 years to the day that he hasn't fought since. So maybe a little bit of cage rust, but obviously it's not like Edwards hasn't been training. He's been in training camp several times over. He's just had to. I don't think he's pulled out of the fights. I believe his opponents have pulled out of the fights or they've been, pulled off cards. But, it's also kind of like, let's see how he is with 2 years off. Like I said, he's probably been training between those 2 years. So I don't expect anything less from Leon Edwards. He's number 3 in the world for a reason. But I was just so happy to see Bully B get his chance to just kind of reach the top 5. And honestly, he deserves it. And he's a fucking G for taking this on, I think, like 3 weeks notice, 2 weeks notice, saving the entire event. Because before this, Leon Edwards was calling out a bunch of fighters. He was calling out, I believe, like Jorge Masvidal and, I believe, a bunch of welterweights. Even Stephen Thompson wanted a piece of that. And he didn't want Stephen Thompson. There was just a bunch of people calling him out, and then finally they agreed on Bully B. And because the reason why I'm so happy is because while Leon Edwards was calling all these guys out, it was very much looking like there wasn't going to be a replacement for the fight. And I was really worried that we were going to lose the fight again. Obviously, we lost the Chimaev fight, but I wanted to see Leon Edwards fight again. And I was kind of worried he was going to get another fight pulled. And clearly he wanted to fight again because he was calling out everybody and their grandmothers, and nobody was accepting, and it was either that or the UFC didn't want it. But then finally Bully B stepped in like, I'm here to save the card, and we got that. So I'm so excited for this fight because Bully B is going to bring the pain to Leon Edwards. And Leon Edwards is no joke. Both of these guys have an equal record too, which is funny, 18-3 against 18-3. And I'm just excited to see these guys because Bully B's been rising through the ranks for a while now, very quickly recently too, and he's had some great finishes. I think like his last 3 or 4 fights have been by finish, or at least 2 or 3 of them have been by finish, and very deadly finishes as well. So I'm excited to see him fight. But Leon Edwards, even though he hasn't fought in 2 years, he's no slouch, man. He was at that point in the rankings for a reason. Just nobody would accept fights against him, or he wouldn't accept fights against people. So I'm excited for this fight because finally we get to see Leon Edwards fight again, and I get to see Bully B get what he is owed, and I am so happy. And honestly, I'm going to be a little bit more biased towards this main event, but my heart's kind of going towards Bully B. But I won't be upset if Bully B loses. Bully B, for those who don't know, obviously, I know a lot of people aren't going to know, is Bilal Muhammad. But anyway, I'm really excited for that. And that is just next week's fight card, like this coming week's fight card. That's just a fucking fight night. We still got UFC 260 and I believe another fight night as well this month. Yeah, that's right. There's 2 pay-per-views this month. The pay-per-view that just happened, and we also have UFC 260 at the end of the month, which showcases the heavyweight title between Stipe Miocic and Francis Ngannou 2, because they fought before, and fucking Francis Ngannou almost knocked Stipe's head off, and then Stipe was like, nope, I'm going to wet blanket you and just fucking control you, because I see there's a weakness. And now I'm just expecting an all-out fight between both guys, because Francis Ngannou's a little bit more sharpened now, but Stipe is also more grizzled and more prepared for what Francis has to offer. Both guys are more prepared for what they both have to offer, so it's going to be interesting. And then if that wasn't enough, the co-main event, we've got fucking Alexander Volkanovski making his second official title defense against Brian Ortega, who, if you don't remember, very much earned that title shot against Korean Zombie when he just ran through TKZ for 5 rounds. Just outstruck TKZ. TKZ couldn't even get his fucking game plan in, and he just completely controlled the fight. Brian Ortega showed some crisp boxing. Clearly, after Max took his soul, he just went into hiding and started training boxing for like a century, and now he's just looking so defined. But I'm just gonna give my early prediction here. I think Volk's gonna win that fight, to be honest. But I do see Brian Ortega giving him a fucking pain in the ass, so I'm excited for that fight. There are other fights on the card, actually 2 on the main card right now that I know of, which is Tyron Woodley versus Vicente Luque. Again, I'm going to give a prediction for that fight easily. I think with the way Tyron Woodley's been fighting recently, if he just keeps going to that, then Vicente Luque is going to win easily. But not only that, we've got the return of Sean O'Malley, and they're throwing him to the Wolves again against Thomas Almeida. So we'll see how that goes. Maybe Sean O'Malley might get a W, or maybe Thomas Almeida might beat him, because Sean O'Malley seemed to have a little bit of trouble with Cheeto. Even, a lot of people are going to say, no, he didn't. But if you remember, he did. He wasn't handily winning that fight. It was pretty fucking close between those two, because nothing of note happened. And then, that leg kick. So, that's also on the fight card. And before we get into the UFC 259 card, just to finish things off, we also have a fight night before that, after this week's, between Kevin Holland and Derek Brunson. And that one is going to be fun too, because Kevin Holland is on a complete tear. The guy is on a 5-fight win streak just in the last year. 2020, man. 5 fights. All 5 wins. 4 or 5 fights, all of them wins. And he's been calling out Derek Brunson for a while. So these two have been jawing at each other. And Holland is no joke. He's got great knockout power, but so does Derek Brunson. But also Derek Brunson has a very complete wrestling skill set. It's going to be interesting to see how this goes. I'm just excited because there seems to be some bad blood between the two. And honestly, that's just enough for me to get hyped for a main event between 2 mid-tier fighters that nobody else would know. If I know the bad blood between them, then I am going to be so fucking hyped for it. So anyway, that one's going to be great as well. So we've got a couple of fight cards coming up that are going to be incredible. But anyway, let's get on to UFC 259. Let's be honest. This is the real reason why you guys are listening, to find out what happened last night. So let's get to that. All right. So, like I said, this card was fucking stacked from top to bottom. We had around, I think it was, 7, almost 8 hours of fights. If you were one of the prelim gang and watched from the early prelims all the way to the main event, yeah, it was like 8 hours of fights. I was exhausted by the end of the night. But were they a good night of fights? Oh, fuck yeah. Oh, fuck yeah. From the early prelims alone, all right? So the early prelims, we had fucking Tim Elliott headlining them with Jordan Espinoza, which a funny little tidbit happened during that fight, but we'll get to the, first fights first. So opening up the entire card was Mario Bautista versus Trevin Jones, and that was a back and forth between those guys, which ended in a KO. And then if that wasn't enough to satiate your hunger for KOs, we had Uros Medic versus Elion Cruz, and Medic just ran through Cruz via TKO. And then if that wasn't enough, we had a women's strawweight fight between Livia Hanato Souza and Amanda Lemos. And Amanda Lemos just fucking ate Hanata Souza. And then if that wasn't enough, we kind of got a little break from the KOs when Sean Brady just ran through Jake Matthews and finished him by submission. But then right back at it, we had a slugfest between Kennedy Nzechukwu and Carlos Ulberg, Izzy's, Israel Adesanya's guy. That was on the Contender Series, actually. these two just threw hands, man. Just fucking threw bombs. And in the second round, it was the same thing again, and they were up against the cage, and yeah, Kennedy and Zukwu just got Ulberg into a complete brawl fest where they started swinging with their hands down, and Zukwu caught him with like a right hand, a left hand, and then a right hand that just dropped Carlos Ulberg, and that was the end of it. Just a great fight altogether, though. And then to kind of get a break from all the finishes in the headliner for the early prelims, we had Tim Elliott versus Jordan Espinoza. And this fight wasn't too much of note because Tim Elliott ate some shots and then just started wrestle fucking Espinoza. It was what he said to Espinoza on the ground during said wrestle fucking that actually piqued the interest of a lot of people watching last night, including myself. During one of the sequences where he was on top of Espinoza and he was kind of like raining down shots and smothering him, he was saying something like, "Oh, you're a woman beater. You choked a chick. You choked a woman in 2018 or something like that." And he said, "Some girl told me that. Some girl told me you choked her in 2018." And Espinoza replies with, "You don't know the full story." And fucking Elliot replies, "I know enough." And all you hear is Espinoza say, "You don't know shit," as he's getting fucking pummeled. And it was just, it piqued a lot of people's interest. So that might be something that I'll look into later on. But I just thought that was a little interesting that Tim Elliott brought that up. I didn't know that there was as much bad blood between the two as I thought. And the fact that Elliott brought that up, I mean, if it's true, that's pretty fucking scummy on Espinoza's part. But if it's not true, that's scummy on Tim Elliott's part. But anyway, even though that fight was kind of a little bit more boring, we had that incredible moment there where they were just talking shit to each other, and Tim Elliott made some pretty wild accusations. So that was the early prelims, and if that wasn't enough for you, we had the preliminary card still, which had 4 fights. I just named off 6 fights. That was on the early prelims alone. Usually on the early prelims, we have like 2 fights. We had 6. Now this is the regular prelims. And that opened up with a flyweight bout between Kai Kara-France and Rogério Bontorin, which ended very weirdly because near the end of the first round, after Rogério Bontorin kind of dominated Kai Kara-France on the ground, it seemed he kind of wore out after he did that, and Kai Kara-France took advantage of this and landed a right hand, or either it was, I can't remember if it was a hook or if it was an overhand, but he landed a right hand that kind of flattened Bontorin, and he was walking away from it because he literally made Bontorin faceplant, and he was walking away from the fight. But I guess his corner said that the fight's not over yet. The fight's not over yet, even though Herb Dean was on his way over to wave it off. So Kai Kara-France goes back over, tries to throw another strike, but that's when Herb Dean steps in. I just felt Herb Dean was a little slow to the finish there, but I think he knew that the fight was done. It was a brutal finish, so it was a little wacky finish there, but brutal finish and great finish by Kai Kara-France. And if that wasn't enough for your flyweight taste, we had another flyweight fight between Joey B and Askar Askarov. This was actually between number 2 and number 3, so potential title shot qualifications here maybe after Figgy versus Moreno 2, I don't know. But I expected Joey B to put on more of a fight, but Askar Askarov showed just how goddamn good these Eastern Europeans are, man. He just dominated the fight from start to finish. He kept backing up Joey B, forcing Joey B to eat his feints and everything. And then when he would smother Joey B with a takedown, and he completely dominated the entire aspect of the fight. It wasn't a bad domination, but it was still bad enough for me where it was like, come on, Joey B, like, you should have done better than this. And honestly, it was a little heartbreaking to see somebody like Joey B, always the bridesmaid, never the bride, just get completely knocked down further out of title contention. But Askar Askarov looking like a possible flyweight title holder soon. Let's see if he can get through Figgy. I'm actually excited for that. So, also, before I get ahead of myself, they actually announced Figgy and Moreno 2 will be happening, I believe, at UFC 261. So, there's that. I'm really fucking excited for that. We finally got the rematch for those two. For, in my opinion, 2020's fight of the year. Everybody else thought Wei Li and Joanna won, which honestly I can see the argument for because it was a goddamn great fight. If you guys want any fights to go back and watch that fight. Honestly, great women's MMA fight, and it was just brutal. Both women just fucking throwing strikes. Fucking Joanna's head looked like a fucking magical 8 ball afterwards. She was looking like E.T., man. Like, Wei Li had her puffy eyes and bruises all over. Like, they just brought it to each other. So, yeah, anyway, watch that if you want any good fights. But anyway, getting on with the rest of these fights, we have a bantamweight belt, one of two bantamweight belts on the prelims. A bantamweight belt between Song Yadong and Kyler Phillips. And this was a pretty fun fight. Didn't go exactly the way I thought. I thought Song Yadong was going to win. But Kyler Phillips did a very good job at playing a smart fight, keeping his distance and utilizing takedowns and everything. And I don't know, man. Kyler Phillips just showed that he's going to be dangerous in the bantamweight division. He showed that he is an all-around great martial artist. And if that wasn't enough for the bantamweights, we had Dominic Cruz going up against everybody's Megan Anderson hater, Casey Kenny. Just kidding, by the way. I know that Casey Kenny probably doesn't fucking hate Megan. But Dominic Cruz versus Casey Kenny. And this fight was a lot closer than I would have expected. I knew that Dominic was going to fucking win. I knew Cruz was going to win. But I didn't expect Casey Kenny to put it on him as much as he did. I wanted to see Cruz beat Casey Kenny by some sort of finish to show that Cruz can still hang with these guys. But Casey Kenny gave him so much trouble in that fight. Gave him so much trouble taking him to the ground. Had answers for his dynamic little fucking stance switching and everything. Constantly beating at Cruz's legs. Another thing, by the way, rise of the calf kicks. Like one of the biggest fucking developments in MMA recently. Everybody's using it now, so it's exciting to see because even though I hate seeing people get knee injuries because of my own knee injury, I love seeing calf kicks because they're so quick and they do so much damage and it actually does so much to the fight. Casey Kenny did a great job at doing that, but Dominic Cruz altogether outstruck Casey Kenny, kept the pace going despite having his legs chopped down, and showed that he can still hang, but it was a little worrying how badly Casey Kenny gave him trouble. And Dominic Cruz ended up winning a very close split decision that ended up being 29-28. And I honestly was biting my nails during the judges' scorecards because part of me was like, I don't think, maybe Dom didn't do enough to win. Maybe Casey actually edged out the win because, like I said, it was that close. It wasn't a robbery. Either guy could have got it, but it was definitely a fucking close fight and very worrying how much punishment Casey Kenny put on Dom. But anyway, that's it for the prelims. We're about to get into the big meat and potatoes, the main card. Let's just get into this shit, all right? So the first fight was a little bit of a bust between Thiago Santos and Alexander Rakic. All my praise goes to Rakic. I'm a little upset because I get where Thiago Santos is coming from. He's still coming off of he blew out his entire knee and he was out for probably a year or so. And then when he just recently came back, he lost to Glover Teixeira. And now he's up against a killer in Alexander Rakic, who I believe actually recently beat Anthony Smith. So just a little interesting to see how this was going to go. Instead, Rakic pretty much controlled the pace of the fight, and Thiago seemed a little gun-shy. He seemed pretty damn gun-shy, and a little worried about his knees, if anything, because he seemed almost wobbly on his knees, and every time a leg kick landed, he worried more about that than anything else. And it didn't look like Thiago, man. Didn't look like Thiago Santos. Didn't look like the same man that gave John Jones a run for his money on one leg, pretty much. So I was really upset with that. But, even though that fight was a little upsetting, I'm happy for Rakic for getting the win. He fought a great fight and just completely nullified Thiago Santos and scared the shit out of him, I guess. But anyway, good win for Alexander Rakic. And then going into the next fight, it was a lightweight fight between Islam Makhachev and the handsome man Drew Dober. And this was a lot worse than I thought. Oh my god, I thought Drew Dober was gonna have more of a chance. He did not have a single fucking chance throughout 3 rounds, man. He landed a couple good shots, but Islam Makhachev, his ground game is something else. He's like Khabib, man. He is a dominant wrestler. Once he gets you down, there is no getting back up. And if you manage to get back up, he's just gonna take you back down again. He ain't gonna let go. He is just deadly on the ground and was constantly threatening with submissions until he finally fucking scored one at the near the beginning of the third round, actually, after dominating Drew Dober for 2.5 rounds. So that was a great fight by Islam Makhachev. But that leaves us with our first of 3 title bouts. And we're going to be going a little bit more in depth into these. The first one actually ended in controversy. So we'll get into that. So the bantamweight fight was between Peter Yan, or Peter Yan, fuck it, and Aljamain Sterling. And these guys have had bad blood for a while. Aljo called him out after finishing Corey Sandhagen with the cringy, I'm coming on your ass, I'm gonna come for your ass, promo. And, they've been talking a lot of shit on social media. Aljo's been saying a lot of shit. Peter Yan's been saying a lot of shit. And, obviously, Peter Yan's coming off of that incredible title win against Jose Aldo. But, I mean, I'm not trying to discount him, but I don't think that fight should have been made in the first place. But anyway, we finally got a legitimate bantamweight title bout between these two. And it went somehow the way you didn't expect it to. Aljo won the first round, in my opinion, because he came out pretty strong. He's not a heavy striker. He's more of a volume striker and a ground specialist because he's an incredible wrestler. Has very deadly submissions. But he can strike. He's great with his jabs. He's got long, lanky arms. And that's how he came out to begin with, was he came jabbing and throwing combos with his long, lanky ass arms, just kind of backing up Peter Yan, and he actually had him in trouble a couple times in the first, and just kept backing him up. But halfway through the round, Peter Yan started to kind of get his groove and started to kind of feel him out, and started to kind of counterpunch whenever Aljo would come in, which forced Aljo to, go for takedowns. And this is where it gets surprising, because we all knew that Peter Yan had great, not the pinnacle of defensive wrestling, but he had great defensive wrestling. But we didn't think it was going to be as good as we thought going up against somebody like Aljo, who's pretty much like when it comes to wrestling, the Khabib of bantamweight. But that ended up happening because I think at the end of the fight, so I'm not going to the end of the fight right away, I'm just saying by the end of the fight, I think there was like 17 takedowns attempted or something like that, or close to it, and only 1 or 2 of those actually got through. In fact, one of the takedown attempts ended in Peter Yan's takedown attempt instead. So it was really embarrassing, but the first round, Aljo came out pretty strong, ended fairly close. Aljo ended up edging out the round, in my opinion, probably in a lot of judges' scorecards too. But then the second round, Peter Yan made some adjustments, started kind of coming out a little bit more aggressive. And like I said, he had a little bit more feeling for Aljo's striking and his timing. So he was countering it with very heavy punches and just hurting Aljo. And then, like I said, his defensive wrestling was on par last night. He was just defending everything that Aljo was throwing at him with takedowns, just stuffing them, or when they're on the ground, it was a complete scramble that didn't leave Peter Yan on his back or let his back touch the canvas. It was just some crazy shit. So the second round was pretty one-sided, in my opinion. Not too one-sided as the third round, but the second round was starting to become one-sided. Peter Yan started to get his groove, and Aljo was starting to run out of ideas. Both guys were starting to show a little bit of a gas, but going into the third round, Aljo just clearly started to tire out, because at this point he'd been going for a couple of takedown attempts and they've been failing, and that takes a lot of energy out of you when you're trying to push and try to lift someone. That's a lot of strength you're trying to go through, and he exerted a lot of energy trying to take him down. and he was looking tired. So Peter Yan started to outstrike him, started to piece him up, and again started defending his takedowns more. And I think the third round, if I remember last night, the third round was where Peter Yan got his own little takedown attempt and a reversal against Aljo. Aljo went for a takedown attempt or like tried to trip him, and they kind of went into like a little scramble on the feet in the clinch, and Peter Yan ended up getting Aljo's back and pretty much suplexed him to the ground. So yeah, it was starting to become a little bit embarrassing for Aljo. Going into the fourth round, same shit was happening, and all of a sudden Peter Yan's winning, and Aljo's going for a takedown, but Peter Yan stuffs it. Aljo's still grounded on the ground, and you can hear Mark Smith clearly say he's grounded, stating that he's a grounded fighter. He cannot knee or kick him in the head. He can punch him in the head and then get back into the guard and start punching him, but he can't kick him, he can't knee him. He's a grounded opponent. So Mark Smith says that, and part of me understands this because, Peter Yan does not speak a lick of English. But what does he do next? We heard his corner yelling something, but we couldn't exactly hear it because obviously it's in Russian. Apparently, somebody in his corner told him to knee Aljo because he wasn't actually grounded. And so Peter Yan goes as Aljo's grounded and knees him square in the fucking temple. And didn't knock out Aljo, but Aljo played it off just enough to get the disqualification. Which, to be honest, it should have been a disqualification anyway, even if Aljo was fine, because it was a blatant foul, in my opinion. But here's where I have a little bit of an issue. Because of the disqualification, Aljo ended up winning the title. He ended up taking the belt from Peter Yan. Here's my issue with that. Aljo did not earn the title. He earned the title shot, but he was getting his ass beat until that stupid fucking knee from Yan. That being said, because Peter Yan got his title stripped because he got disqualified, I think that's understandable. I think it should be vacant now. I think that there should either be a rematch or Peter Yan should have a chance to fight another top one contender for the vacant title. I don't think Aljo should win it because he was clearly losing that fight, and to me, he lost that fight, even if it was a disqualification. And Peter Yan was disqualified. So I think right now, even though that's not going to happen, I think that the bantamweight title should be vacated, and it should be fought against two guys who aren't the champion, who are the top contenders. May that be Peter Yan and Aljo again, maybe. I don't know. I don't care. But it should be vacated. Because a lot of issues happened last night with Aljo taking that belt home. He wasn't happy with it. The fans weren't happy with it. There's people all over Twitter today still going on about how Aljo fucking acted his way out of it and won himself a title. And just how he deserves an Oscar and all that. So, a lot of controversy behind it. I personally think that if they're going to do something like that, just vacate the title if the champion gets disqualified. I don't think the dude who got the foul fucking landed on him should get the belt. I just think that the champ should get his belt stripped because he decided to cheat in a championship fight. So that's my opinion. But anyway, that leads us into the co-main event. This was a fucking wash. Okay, first of all, I saw a lot of people saying that Megan Anderson has a fucking chance despite the betting odds being ridiculously out of her favor. Like, she was like by the end of by the fight start, she was like a plus 500 underdog or something like that. So, a lot of people on MMA Twitter were saying that Megan's got this. Megan's going to be the first woman to beat Amanda Nunes, despite the betting odds, and despite Megan even stating she's never felt someone like Amanda punch before. And what I thought was going to happen exactly happened. Just, she didn't get knocked out. But she got practically fucking TKO'd. Amanda threw like the first right hand she threw, wobbled Anderson, and then she threw like two more strikes that dropped Megan Anderson. And then she got on top of Megan and started just pummeling her with strikes, just raining down shots. And to be honest, in Megan's defense, she did a great job scrambling and trying to change position and defend. But in doing that, in that panic, she opened herself up for Amanda Nunes being a crafty little bitch and landing an armbar. And, ugh. I hate seeing these arm bars because they're the worst. The ones where they end up so deep that the fighter literally pushes the arm under their armpit and bends the arm even more because they can. And that was how bad the arm bar was, and it forced Megan to tap. And I'm just saying it now. I said it on fucking the weekend. Like, I said it on Saturday, like last night and Friday. I said it. Mark my words, man. Dad Mom Amanda Nunes is going to be the next best thing alongside fucking apparently sober Costa now. Sea-Level Kane, fucking motivated Connor. You know, it's just going to be this mystical fighter because she's a dad mom now. Like, she's the dad of the two moms, and she's got a kid now. So that mom, like, instinct, she's got something to fight for, is gonna come out of her. And I swear to God, that just made her more fucking dangerous, man. And honestly, it could very well make Nina dangerous too. So we'll see how the couple does in the UFC. But my God, I don't see anybody beating Amanda soon. And as for the women's featherweight division, honestly, I might see a bye-bye. Because, yeah. I can't think of any other contenders in that division that could stand with Amanda Nunes. Seriously. Same with the bantamweights. Juliana Pena actually called her out after her fight, and I'm just gonna say this now. No chance. It's going to be a wash. Amanda Nunes is gonna run through her, just like the rest of everybody else. Amanda Nunes is just too good. She's just on a whole nother level than these women. Just like Valentina in the flyweight division, she's just on a whole nother fucking level compared to the rest of her division. But anyway, with the last of the title fights coming up, I just want to say, I still think this should have been Glover versus Jan Blachowicz. But we didn't fucking get that. Because Mr. Victim Mentality wanted to be the best in the world. Well, you know, I'm usually not an Izzy hater, but recently his fans and him have been really pissing me off with this whole victim mentality bullshit. And honestly, the weird shit he did with Mama birding his fucking dog weirded me out too and kind of made me a non-fan. So seeing this happen last night was great. And I'm gonna say this because Izzy is a great fucking fighter. He fought a great fight against Jan. It was a close fight. Jan, however, was just backing Izzy up and forcing Izzy to counter and just outstriking Izzy the whole time. And even though it was close in that regard, despite Yan outstriking Izzy, Izzy had no answer for what Yan had next for him. So the entire fight was just Izzy waiting for Yan to come in, picking his shots like he normally does, and Yan just eating those shots like they're just a nice fucking bowl of soup and just going in and throwing shots of his own. And I'm going to be honest, Izzy ate Yan's shots like they were a slice of pizza. Just like nothing. Like the Polish power wasn't even there. So, you know, kudos to fucking Izzy, man. He ate those shots every time it hit him. And he even got hurt at one point in the fight. But it was just Yan constantly pushing forward and just forcing grappling, like clinch exchanges, and just just throwing more strikes than Izzy, forcing Izzy to counter. And that happened for like at least 3 rounds, making it very close. It was like going into the 4th, I believe it was like 2-1 Izzy. People had it 2-1 Izzy. And that was when Yan just changed the entire tide of the fight. Because I gotta say this. Izzy might have expected, because Yan's looking big and bulky, that he's going to be like Costa and he's going to tire out quickly. Well, Mr. Adesanya, there's a big difference between muscles at middleweight, which are just mainly muscles and not actually your fat and everything, and muscles at light heavyweight, which are more likely going to be your fat. So less oxygen being drained towards them, more oxygen for you. And he underestimated that. On top of that, He weighed like 5 pounds under, and he was in fact bulking for that fight. So Jan already outweighed him, and Jan took that advantage and took him down and just smothered him. And you know what? Fuck it. I'm going to say it. It was satisfying as fuck. It was so satisfying to see Izzy look absolutely helpless on the ground. And I usually don't get like this, but do you know why I'm like this? Because Izzy was talking some dumb shit in an interview about how even though Jan's a fucking black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, that Izzy is going to submit Jan on the ground, and that's how he's going to become the double champ. So when Jan took him to the ground and then just fucking controlled him, didn't even lay on top of him, just completely denied transitions and just threw shots and kept Izzy there and just tired him out because he just laid his whole fucking weight on him while transitioning everywhere, just dominating Izzy. It just was so satisfying. Oh my God. So I think it's obvious how the fight went because the 5th round went the exact same fucking way. Jan just took Izzy down, controlled Izzy. Izzy had no fucking answer for it. Izzy looked like, you know, when you're play wrestling, I'm a little brother, so I can, you know, I have the experience of this. So any other younger siblings, please, you know, kind of corroborate this. Has anyone ever fought with their sibling and their sibling just lays on top of you and you can't do anything because they're so fucking heavy? So they pin you like that because, you know, you're supposed to pin them 1, 2, 3. So that's how they pin you and you're fucking helpless because they're so heavy. Yeah, that's what it fucking looked like. It looked like Izzy was the baby brother and Jan was the big brother just holding them down like, ha ha ha, I'm going to pin you, little bro. It was just satisfying to watch. So that being said, I don't think Izzy's going to beat Jones now with that performance. Izzy, stay at middleweight because you are clearly a fucking murderer at middleweight. Jesus Christ. And honestly, I can't wait to see who he fights next at middleweight, to be honest. I can't think of anybody who's next, honestly, because the next in line would probably be Rob, like Whitaker, and he already fucking ran through Rob, so we'll see. But anyway, my God, that is it for last night's fights. I'm still reeling from these fights, and I'm so excited for when they put this shit on Fight Pass, because it might be one of the cards I actually watch back again. It gave me kind of UFC 217 vibes. But anyway, that's it for this massive stacked pay-per-view card. Oh, what a fucking night of fights we had. And then on top of that, like I said earlier in the podcast, we've got fucking Leon Edwards versus Bully B next week. Or, well, this coming week. And then the week after that, we got Derek Brunson versus Kevin Holland, which is just a load of bad blood between them. And then after that, we've got another pay-per-view, which seems to be pretty decently stacked so far, and is only announcing more fights as the days go on. So I'm excited because March is looking like a great month for fights. I'm excited. So anyway, I will see you guys in the next episode. Don't forget to share this shit with your friends, and I hope you guys have a great week, a healthy and safe week. I will see you guys after next week's fight card. See you guys.
You've been listening to the Dillo's Dojo podcast. Keep in touch with Dillo on his social media at Dillo Ross on Twitter and Dillo Ross on Instagram.